Hey, if you're new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It would really mean a lot to me, and honestly, it'd make my day. If you already did, thank you so much. Oh, and by the way, if you like listening to fan fiction, check out my other channel. The link's in the description.
A Crew for a King by Fallen Angel Codester. To become king of the pirates, you need a crew, and in order to reach his dream, Luffy will need all the help he can get. Extended crew story, slightly more serious Luffy. Adios.
Hey Usopp. Check these out. Luffy waved the arrows around as Usopp walked over to him on the beach, taking them from him. Huh, he said, these look like regular arrows, but the heads are thick and white. I wonder what would happen if Usopp was interrupted as he slammed the arrow into the sand, and white clouds exploded out of the head. Oh, awesome, cloud arrows. Good find, Luffy. I can use these. That's what I figured, Luffy replied. They were in the middle of robbing the white berets of their goods at Nami's request, so of course he'd found the arrows. He looked up at the Mary's deck, where Wiper watched them from. How do we got to God's house, Wiper? We're not rushing in head first, you moron, Wiper called irritably. We're going to my village first. Get up here so we can go. Where's your village? He asked as he stretched his arms to the railing and pulled himself up, landing next to the massive man. South, Wiper replied, away from Upper Yard, where Enel's mantra does not reach. What is mantra? Vivi asked him curiously. You said it was a power that lets him see us. That's exactly what it is, he told her. Enel has spread his mantra across all of Skypiea. He sees all in Upper Yard and beyond. Thankfully, our village seems to be out of his range. After the rest of the crew had boarded the ship, arms full of the white berets' goods, the Going Merry was turned around and started heading southwest, back towards the clouds that surrounded the islands. The going was slow, but the crew found ways to pass the time as they sailed. Why do you have wings, Wiper? Chopper asked. Luffy turned to see that yes, Wiper did indeed have wings on his back. They looked tiny and useless, and honestly a bit ridiculous on his massive frame. Why do you have horns? Wiper asked back. Evolution, I suppose. My people have wings on our backs. Why, I do not know. Can you fly? Luffy asked. No, have you tried? No, Luffy grinned at the massive warrior. Wanna try? He asked, excitement building up. Wiper just looked annoyed with him. No, he said once again, walking away from Luffy to lean on the railing and stare ahead. Luffy considered bothering him some more, but the man already seemed annoyed enough. Instead, Luffy opted to harass someone reliable. Hey Nami, let me see that whistle, he said, latching onto the redhead as she passed him. He reached for the whistle around her neck, but she shoved his head out of the way. No way, you'll blow this thing too early, she replied, back off. But Gonfall said we had a freebie, Luffy moaned, trying to grab it again. Yes, exactly, I don't want you wasting it on nothing. Luffy was so distracted by Nami he didn't notice Wiper rejoining them. Did you say Gonfall? He asked, startling the pair of them. Oh, yeah, he did. Nami said. He's that old guy with the spotted bird. You know him? Do I know him? Wiper asked, voice unsteady. That useless prick is the former god of Skypiea. Silence fell over the crew as Wiper said this, everyone watching him in surprise. That weird old man was God? Yosaku asked. I don't buy it. Yeah, he didn't strike me as particularly holy, Nijiko agreed, or pious. Gonfall was God when Enel came, Wiper replied angrily, and did about as much to stop him as anyone else. Can't really say I blame him, but if you can't protect your people, you aren't a leader worth anything. Luffy watched the man quietly, wondering how it was that Gonfall had gone from God to swindling mercenary. If he's just offering his services to Blue Sea explorers, he truly has fallen farther than I thought. If Enel is as invincible as you claim, Sanji said, I can't exactly blame him. The Merry continued chugging along towards the clouds barrier near the edge of the White Sea, and Luffy still had no idea where the village was supposed to be. He still couldn't see anything of note, and they were getting closer by the second. Maybe it was hidden in the clouds, that made sense. Before Luffy could voice his question, he surged forward and fell onto his face as Merry came to a blistering halt out of nowhere, sending more than just him into the deck. What the hell just happened? Marianne asked, did we hit something? Hit what? Johnny asked. We're in the clouds. Before anyone could ask, Mary groaned as she was hoisted out of the water, large crustacean claws gripping her as they were lifted into the air. It's another one of those shrimps, Nijiko called from her position at the railing. It's caught us for some reason. This normal, Wiper? Luffy asked the warrior, who grimaced. No, this isn't for the village, he replied. It's a speedy shrimp in service to Enel. It's going to take us to Upper Yard if we don't kill it. Wiper ran to where his bazooka was laying, grabbing it and turning around. Swordsman, I'll need your help. We need to free the ship and slice this thing to pieces. How do we do that without falling into the clouds? Zoro asked as Mary groaned again, the shrimp beginning to speed away from the cloud barrier and towards Upper Yard. It's beneath us. I'll handle it, Wiper said, slipping his feet quickly into his shooter skates. Once it lets the ship go, hack it to pieces or we'll all get sent to God in more than one way. Without another word, Wiper activated his shooters and launched off of Mary into the clouds. Luffy ran to the railing and watched as Wiper glided across the clouds and sped ahead of them, before turning and raising his bazooka to aim it at the shrimp. An explosion rang out, and Luffy saw a cannonball fly for the shrimp and strike it in the head. The massive creature cried in anger, making everyone cover their ears before they were deafened. Wiper did not stop at one shot, pelting the shrimp with more than one blast as he skated around it. Before long the shrimp must have had enough, because it lowered itself back into the ocean, roughly dropping them back into the clouds. Where'd it go? Sanji asked, looking around. It's underneath the surface still, Usopp called from the upper deck. Keep your eyes open. As if one cue, the Mary surged to the side as the shrimp struck her, the wood of the caravel groaning in a bad way. It's gonna sink us. No way in hell can we let that happen, Zoro shouted. Johnny, Yosaku, to me. The two men joined their teacher at the side of the ship the shrimp hadn't struck, waiting. Soon enough, Luffy saw the clouds being shoved out of the way as the shrimp sped towards them. Zoro now, he shouted, but the first mate did not need to be told. He jumped into the air and positioned himself over the shrimp as it sped towards them, his grip on his blades tightening. 108-pound Phoenix. The air was sliced by Zoro, and the projectiles flew towards the shrimp and struck it just before it hit Mary. The ship was saved by this pass as the shrimp flung itself up to the surface angrily, launching its claws towards Zoro as he fell towards it. Luffy was faster though, stretching his arm and pulling his first mate back before he could be struck. As Zoro fell back, Johnny and Yosaku flew towards the outstretched claws. Sword of the Sea. Cascading Slash. Sword of the Earth. Boulder Drop. Johnny swung his sword vertically and Yosaku diagonally, and together the two men cleanly sliced off the pincers of the shrimp's claws, the severed meat falling back into the ocean. The shrimp let out another angry roar, but Wiper interrupted it by racing right to its mouth, and shoving his bazooka into the open orifice. Burn bazooka. Wiper cocked the handle and a flame dial clicked into the launcher. Without wasting another second he launched a torrent of flames straight into the soft inside of the crustacean. It flung its arms around violently as it screamed in anguish, the flames roasting its insides. After a while, the shrimp's flailing stopped. Its arms dropped back into the water and floated listlessly, the light leaving its eyes. As Luffy dragged back Johnny and Yosaku, the shrimp turned over in the water and exposed Itotid, showing that it was indeed dead. Damn, that thing is huge, Usopp remarked as he stared down at the shrimp's stomach. Look at it. Looks damn tasty, Sanji said. Johnny, Yosaku, help me carve it up. We'll give it as a peace offering to Wiper's people. Right behind you, big bro, Johnny called, both of them calling in line behind the cook. As they jumped onto its underside to carve it up, Wiper kicked off of the clouds and landed back on the deck, kicking off the skates. I was right when I said you all are strong, he said. You'll make good allies. Luffy grinned at this, putting his hands behind his head. We're a strong bunch, he said. Enel will find that out when we come to ring that bell. Far away from the events in the White Sea, in a place called God's Shrine in the upper yard, sat a man. This man was lazing around on a cushion, wearing no shirt and baggy pants. A blue sash was wrapped around his waist, and gold ringlets were wrapped around his wrists. As he raised his head in slight annoyance, his stretched earlobes shifted around his face. Huh, he said, disinterested, looks like the shrimp was killed. These people should not be underestimated. He rested his head on his hand, yawning. No matter. If they step foot in upper yard, I'll set the priests on them. And if that doesn't work, what are they gonna do? Defeat me? Enel laughed heartily at this. As if. No one can defeat a god. Not even with an immunity. After slicing up a decent amount of the speedy shrimp and transporting it to the kitchen of the Mary, the crew set about storing it. Once they had it safely stored, Luffy put Yosaku up to the task of carrying it with them to Wiper's village as a sign of a goodwill. As they did this, the Mary sailed back towards the cloud barrier, but every time she moaned he became alarmed. None of the sounds Mary was making sounded good, and he hoped she could survive a little longer. He had to imagine that being flung up into the sky so shortly after the damage Hina had done at Alabasta, then getting grabbed and rammed by the shrimp wasn't good. They needed a shipwright more and more by the second. Mary soon shifted so she was parallel with the clouds, and Wiper directed them further west, claiming they were almost there. Luffy still didn't see anything, but he had no reason to doubt the warrior. Here, Wiper said finally, stop here. The crew obliged him and went about furling the sails and tossing down the anchor, Mary coming to a stop outside a completely normal-looking cloud. I don't really see anything, Johnny said, inspecting the clouds near them. That's the idea, Wiper replied as everyone gathered around him. Follow me. With this, he leapt into the clouds and disappeared. They all sat there quietly for a moment, no one daring to follow him yet. Well, I doubt he's tried to kill himself just to fling us back to the blue sea, Robin said cheerfully, walking to the railing and jumping. She disappeared into the clouds as well, and a few seconds later stuck her head back out. Come on, there's a path here. Grateful that someone else had tried it, the crew joined her and jumped in one by one, Yosaku tossing the crate of shrimp in first before jumping after it. Once they were inside, Luffy saw that they were in a small tunnel of clouds that funneled downwards, Wiper waiting a little further away. Come on, he said, it's this way. The crew set out after him, walking through the solid cloud tunnel. The tunnel twisted and turned a few times, but eventually an opening came into view ahead of them and they arrived at it, Luffy's eyes widening. This is so cool, he said in awe, staring out at the village. The village itself was hidden in between cloud layers, sandwiched in between the top layer above and the bottom layer below. In between the layers sat a thriving community of homes, seemingly made of tents with elaborate linings on them. Wiper walked down the steps from the opening, the crew following him silently as they marveled at what they saw. A village in the clouds, Robin said, it's beautiful. This is nothing, Wiper muttered, clenching his fists. Our ancestral home is 1,000 times more beautiful. And I'll give my life to get it back. Come on, let's go to the chief. We have a lot to discuss. Wiper walked off ahead of them, leaving them no choice but to follow. Luffy noticed very quickly that they were definitely an outlier here. Had it not been for Wiper's presence, he felt as though the people they passed would have attacked with the way they watched with a mixture of confusion and caution. All the people in the village were similar to Wiper, having the same dark skin tone and small wings on their backs. Many sported tattoos as well, all kinds of designs surrounding them. Wiper, someone called, making their guide stop. A man walked up to them, similar in height and build to Wiper. His hair was the opposite of Wiper's, in a mohawk and not a long braid. His eyes were covered by a pair of red glasses, and he wore a pink fur vest over his chest, and a skirt like Wiper's around his waist. Kamakiri, Wiper said, giving them his name informally. What? What? Kamakiri mocked. What do you mean, what? What are you doing bringing outsiders here? They're allies of the Mont Blanc family, Wiper replied. This caused a ripple of whispers and confusion to pass over the group, everyone staring even harder at them. They pledged their help to taking down Enel. And you trust them? Kamakiri demanded. Wiper turned his head and looked at Vivi, who matched his gaze without issue. Yes, Wiper replied, we have an arrangement. Kamakiri did not look like he trusted them at all, but he clearly deferred to Wiper's judgment when his shoulders slumped a bit and he stood down. I hope you know what you're doing, he said. Me too, Wiper replied, continuing his march. Kamakiri walked alongside him now, making their way to the biggest tent in the village. The designs on the sides were more elaborate as well, perhaps signaling a person of standing in the community. Standing outside of it was an elderly man in a blue and orange striped robe. In his hand he held a staff with a tribal mask atop it, and on his own head wore what looked like a wolf mask. Luffy thought it made him look a little goofy, but he decided against saying so. "Wiper," the man said as they came to a stop. "I hope you have a good reason for showing these explorers our secret village." "As do I," Wiper said. "As I explained to Kamakiri, these explorers are allied with the Mont Blanc family. They gave me important information pertaining Noland and his fate, and as such I trusted them enough to bring them here." "Oh," the chief asked, "and what information was that?" Wiper's fists clenched again, grinding his teeth. "Noland was executed for being a liar," he said, "because our home was catapulted into the sky by the time he tried to return. He died swearing up and down we did exist." The chief's expression fell dark at this, Kamakiri rubbing the back of his head and cursing. "I see," the chief finally said. "I thank you, travelers, you allowing us to finally know the fate of a revered ally. But surely you of all people, Wiper, did not bring them here just for that." Wiper's jaw clenched now, and Luffy noted he looked somewhat nervous. "They've angered Enel by entering illegally," he said. "They've told me their captain can defeat him." The chief's eyes widened, and the crowd that had followed them started to murmur again. "Bunch of gossips," Zoro muttered under his breath. "And how is that possible?" the chief demanded. "Enel is invulnerable, he cannot be defeated by regular means." "This man is anything but regular," Wiper replied. "Luffy, show them." Taking this as his cue, Luffy took a step forward and raised a hand. "Hey," he greeted, "I'm Luffy. I'm made of rubber. See?" He stretched his arm out to shake the chiefs from where he stood, the man staring down at it in shock before returning the gesture. "Apparently Enel can't hurt me. Rubber doesn't conduct elected from the group. Enel's lightning can't hurt Luffy." "You've eaten the devil's fruit then, boy?" the chief asked, Luffy nodding. "I see. This is certainly an interesting development. But why would you go out of your way to help us?" "Help you?" Luffy asked. "It's not really about you. It's about Cricket. He's Noland's great-something grandson. Guy's life was ruined because of Noland, so he's been looking for the City of Gold. I intend to ring the bell and show him it does exist. But I suppose it does help you guys too." The chief looked surprised by his admission. "You would risk your life for a friend?" he asked, "over something so inconsequential?" "Why wouldn't I?" Luffy asked, confused. This wasn't really any different from saving Nami's village, or freeing Alabasta for Vivi to him. He could help Cricket realize his dream, so he would do so. If I have to kick Enel's ass to find the bell, I will. The chief was silent for a moment, seemingly at a loss. Eventually he sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I don't know what to make of all this," he said. "I don't know if we can defeat Enel with your presence, but, if there's a chance. We have to take it, Chief," Wiper said as he strode forward. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. A living counter to Enel's power has come to us. Our ancestors are surely watching over us." "I don't want to move prematurely, Wiper," the chief replied curtly. "We move without being prepared and Enel slaughters all of us. Counter or no, we can't let that happen." "We can't wait," Wiper shouted angrily. "Enel sees everything, so he knows this man is here. It'll only be a matter of time before he learns of his immunity, and by then we're screwed. We must strike while the iron is hot and take him out. I won't authorize a suicide mission into Upper Yard purely because of one man," the chief yelled back at him. "We must wait for the right opportunity." "We've spent 400 years waiting," Wiper roared, his voice making some of the villagers cower. "We've spent 4 centuries fighting to take back what is ours. Calgara died for what's ours. We have the right opportunity, and we must take it." "Wiper." The chief's voice silenced everyone, even Wiper. The man glared at the warrior for a few excruciating seconds before opening his mouth again. "We cannot be hasty. We will reclaim what is ours. I promise you. But nothing comes to those who cannot wait." The chief said nothing more and walked back into his tent, the flaps closing behind him and ending the conversation. Luffy looked over to Wiper, seeing the warrior was just barely holding in his rage. After a few seconds he turned and left in a huff, his mere presence cutting a path through the onlookers as he stormed away. "So did that go well, or not?" Nijiko asked curiously. Kamakiri laughed. "Wiper's got a bad temper," he explained as he turned to Luffy. "Especially when he's not allowed to go storm Upper Yard whenever he pleases. Don't worry, I'm sure they'll come to an arrangement eventually." "Sure," Whatever, Luffy said. By the way, you guys got a kitchen anywhere? We killed one of those huge shrimp on our way here and brought some meat with us. Yosaku hoisted up the crate a little at this. Kamakiri looked at him. Did you now? He asked, smiling. Then I think this calls for a feast? What do you say, everyone? The village roared in support of the feast, and soon the crate was taken off Yosaku's hands by a group of women, who promised they could cook it. Sanji followed after them, saying he wanted to learn how to cook sky food. Luffy figured it was because the women were scantily clad. You guys hungry? Kamakiri asked. Luffy smiled. Always, he replied. Luffy didn't realize how late it already was as they partied with the Shandia, darkness encroaching on the village quickly. They gathered around a massive bonfire where they were burning what looked like wood, but was apparently a wood substitute that the Skypians used. The crate of shrimp was used to great effect, the meat being cooked over the fire by the women from before as Sanji watched with interest. The Shandia also served a drink that they claimed was not alcoholic, but Luffy could tell his senses had been dulled by it. Although maybe that was the lack of oxygen, he still wasn't really sure. Taking a massive bite out of his shrimp, Luffy looked around them. Wiper isn't hungry, huh? He asked. Kamakiri looked back at him and shrugged as he stoked the fire. He's still pouting, probably, he replied. Give him time and he'll show up. This whole upper yard deal means a lot to him, huh? Usopp asked from Luffy's side. Kamakiri nodded, his mouth twisting into a frown. I'm sure he mentioned it, but Wiper is descended from Calgara, he replied. Calgara was the greatest Shandian who ever lived. He died protecting our ancient homeland, wanting desperately to ring the bell once more and tell Noland we were here. He'll never outright admit to it, but Wiper feels a lot of pressure from that legacy. He thinks it's up to him to restore us to glory. If he'd look around for more than a few seconds, he'd realize we're too weak to do that. Sometimes I wonder if we should even bother fighting anymore. Luffy hadn't wanted to mention it, but Kamakiri was right. He hadn't seen many people who looked able to fight, especially against such overwhelming odds as Enel seemed to be. Wiper's aforementioned fighting force of a dozen or less was certainly not enough. He turned his gaze to the women of his crew, who were seated together and laughing. Nami and Nijiko were sat close to one another, telling a story that made Vivi laugh and Robin smile. Marianne sat on the ground a bit further away, smiling weakly as she sipped her drink. Next to them, Yosaku was showing how strong he was by lifting up half a dozen of the village's children and running around with them, much to their delight. Johnny was showing off his ability to dodge blows to some of the men, Chopper watching in shock and Zoro in pride. Sanji was busy flirting with the cooks from earlier, who looked immensely flattered by his attention. This made him assess the villagers, who all looked happy and well fed despite their circumstances. You ask me, he said suddenly, you guys got something worth fighting for right here. Kamakiri looked over at him in surprise before he looked over his people as well, smiling. Yeah, he said, that's why we resist in the first place. It's for them, we're a family, you know? I do, Luffy agreed with a burp, downing the rest of his shrimp. Alright, where do y'all think Wiper is? I want to talk to him. Probably at his tent down that way, Kamakiri replied, pointing to the eastern edge of the village. If not, check the statue of Calgara nearby. It's one of the other. Luffy nodded, then turned to Usopp. Save some shrimp for me, he said, walking off in the aforementioned direction. Saving food for you is like preparing for the apocalypse, Usopp muttered, making him laugh as he walked off. Soon the sounds of the party faded into the background as he went deeper into the camp, searching for the warrior. There wasn't much light available over where he was, but he could see well enough to get around the tents and items owned by the villagers. Turning a corner, Luffy continued to check tents, but did not see Wiper anywhere. Figuring he must have been at the statue, he turned in its direction and headed towards it, Calgara's stone head peeking out from above the tents. Once he got to it, he saw the man he was looking for, standing in front of it and staring up at his great whatever grandfather. Hey, Luffy greeted with his hand raised. What are you doing over here, big man? Wiper turned to acknowledge him, but then returned his gaze to the statue. I'm in no mood to party, Wiper replied gruffly, arms crossed. Luffy stood next to him and looked up at the statue, crossing his arms as well. This guy your ancestor? He asked, Wiper nodding. I don't see the resemblance. No, I mean, He has a ton of hair, and you only have that one braid. Wiper did not reply to press the issue. You really want to kill this Enel guy, huh? Of course, Wiper said. It's my dream to return my people to their ancient home and restore us to glory. Dream, huh? Luffy asked, turning to look at Wiper. The warrior's eyes seemed focused but distant, as if he was looking not at Calgara, but past him at something else. Something only he could see. He knew that look because he felt he often wore it himself. Why don't we take him down, then? Wiper turned to look at him, looking surprised. The chief forbade it, he said. So? Luffy asked, shrugging his shoulders. He ain't no chief of mine. I'm the leader, not the follower. So my crew and I will head out. Not without me you won't, Wiper growled. It's me who will take Enel's head, not you. I doubt the chief will have much say in the matter if we leave at the dead of night, Luffy said. Even that Enel guy should sleep, right? It'll be perfect. A mission in the dead of night, huh? Wiper asked, raising a hand to his chin. That'd work, but Upper Yard isn't just dangerous because of Enel and his priests. It's home to volatile wildlife as well. We'd have to be extra careful in the dark. That's fine, Luffy said with a wave of his hand. We can handle wolves or whatever. Wiper seemed to be thinking it over, but soon his eyes drifted past Luffy to something behind him. He then frowned. Isa! He shouted, storming past Luffy. Luffy turned to see Wiper approaching a child of the village who looked startled as the warrior came up to her, snatching a little bag from her hands. Give that back, Wiper, she cried, reaching for the bag. It's mine. How many times must we tell you? Wiper demanded. Stop sneaking into Upper Yard. Enel could kill you. It's not worth it over a little bit of Verth. Enel can't catch me, the child proclaimed proudly. I can see him all the time. He never cares when I take it. What's Verth? Luffy asked as he joined them. Wiper turned and tossed him the bag, and Luffy looked inside to see a pile of regular old dirt. It's dirt from the Blue Sea, Wiper explained as Isa watched him warily. Luffy vaguely remembered seeing her riding Yosaku's shoulders earlier. It's valuable to Skypians because it can grow things, whereas clouds cannot. Huh, Luffy said, throwing the pouch back to him. That doesn't seem worth the effort. Which is what we keep telling you, Wiper said, throwing an accusatory finger in Isa's face. Stop risking your life over this. I won't be the one to tell your mother you got vaporized over a handful of Verth. It's ours anyway. Isa protested angrily. She sure had a mouth on her. Enel has no claim to it, neither do the Skypians. I should be able to take as much as I want. That's not how things work anymore, Isa, Wiper growled. Now go on, store your Verth like you wanted. Then go back to the party. Isa looked annoyed at being told what to do, but she snatched her little pouch back and took off for a nearby tent, where she'd been trying to sneak earlier. Luffy then turned to Wiper. Would Enel really vaporize a kid over a handful of dirt? He asked. Wiper grimaced, but nodded. He would, he replied. Luffy digested this information quietly, sighing to himself and punching his open palm. Well, I guess we gotta take him down quickly then, he said. I get the sense that kid won't listen to your warning. Wiper frowned. Probably not, he said. Listen, after the party ends, gather your people and meet me at my tent. I'll have gathered my squad. We'll formulate a plan, and invade Upper Yard in the early morning. Luffy nodded at this, turning to walk back to the party. Don't worry Wiper, he said, we'll take down Enel just in time to ring that bell for lunchtime. We'll tell Cricket, and everybody else, that you're here. Wiper actually snorted at Luffy's comment, which made him smile. I'll hold you to that, Captain Luffy, he said before walking off in the opposite direction. The party with the Shandians lasted deep into the night, lasting as long as it took for the bonfire to die down. Luffy had already gathered his crew and informed them what was happening, telling them to not party too hard. They had work that needed doing later. Once the party started to die down, Luffy and the others left the bonfire behind and walked in the direction of Wiper's tent. Their party attitude had long since faded, all of them in varying degrees of business mode. Are we really going to do this in the middle of the night? Nami asked. Shouldn't we wait for the chief to make a decision? If Wiper can get the warriors to side with him, does it matter? Luffy asked her, raising an eyebrow. The redhead frowned but shook her head. No, I guess not, she said. I just hope this is an actual plan and not whatever you usually come up with. What's that supposed to mean? You know very well what I mean. Alright, stop arguing, Nijiko said as she lightly smacked Luffy on the back. We're supposed to look calm and collected, not a mess. Luffy knew she was right. Even though they weren't exactly the least chaotic crew in the world, they could try and behave for 5 minutes. After walking through the village for a few minutes, Luffy spotted their destination. It wasn't difficult to find Wiper's tent, as the flap was open with the man gathered around with his team. Luffy, Kamakiri called from the door, over here. When the crew reached the tent, Luffy noted that it was too small to hold Wiper's allies and his entire crew, so he elected to bring Zoro and Vivi inside with him while everyone else waited outside, peeking in. So, what's the plan? Luffy asked as he stood opposite the warriors' table with a map of Upper Yard displayed on it. It's not much of a plan, Wiper replied. Like I told you, we invade Upper Yard while Enel and the priest sleep so we can get in further than if it was morning. After that, we need to make it where they sleep. With any luck, they don't wake up early. How far can we take Mary? Vivi asked, her arms crossed as she scanned the map. We could technically sail into Upper Yard itself, the woman next to Wiper said. But it wouldn't be stealthy or convenient. We're better off leaving your ship in the bay and going on foot. Not to mention the waterways are patrolled by more of Enel's speedy shrimp, Wiper said. Your ship would get torn to pieces before we made it to the city. Luffy frowned when he heard this. It was definitely a better idea to leave Mary behind. You mentioned the city, Zoro said. Is that our destination? It is, Wiper confirmed, pointing to the ancient city on the map. Enel's residence is above the ancient city, in an island cloud. That's where we'll find him, if we make it there during the night. Above? Luffy asked, how do we get to him? You guys have wings, but we don't. Easy, the woman next to Wiper said. Enel's home is directly above a gigantic beanstalk that grows from the city. We can climb it up to his shrine. Reiki is right, Wiper said. The giant jack is so huge it's easy to climb up. This is all well and good, Nami said from outside, but will we make to the city in time? It's already past midnight, and we probably won't make it to Upper Yard's shores until almost 1 in the morning. She has a point, Vivi agreed. Unless you guys know Enel's schedule, we might need to wait another night. Wiper frowned at this, rubbing his chin. It's a guess, he admitted, but given Enel's character, I'd wager he sleeps until noon, if not past it. He's not exactly someone who gives a damn about his duties. I don't think we have to worry about him. We would need to worry about his priests, though. Are those his cronies? Zoro asked. They are, Reiki said. 4 powerful warriors trained in mantra. They will definitely be up before noon, keeping Upper Yard safe from people like us. But if we blitz fast enough, we could get past them and to Enel before he has a chance to wake. Luffy had to admit, even by his standards, this was a rough plan. It all seemed to hinge on taking Enel by surprise, but if they couldn't get to him before he woke up, then there was no point. Still though, if he was supposed to be a natural counter, did it matter? Enel couldn't beat him very easily, if at all. That would make all the difference. If it's this easy, Vivi said, why haven't you already done this? That was a good point too. As far as Luffy could see, he was not required at any point of this mission as it was. This is the plan if everything were to go perfectly, Wiper replied with a grimace. But obviously it won't. Upper Yard is home to many dangers, and the odds we get to the city before dawn are slim. But we do still need surprise to gain the upper hand. Enel knowing we're coming will only spell trouble. Not to mention, even if all of that went well, we wouldn't be able to kill him without Luffy present. Why not? Luffy asked. Because like I said, Enel is lightning, Wiper replied. If we tried to stab him, or shoot him, his mantra would warn him, even asleep, and wake him. Then, his fruit would react and save his life. Sneaking to him is the best way to ensure we don't die on the way. Upper Yard is Enel's stomping ground, Reiki added. If we did this while he was awake, he'd just hit us with lightning on our way. Which is why we need the rubber man. Luffy could see it now. This was definitely only possible because he could strike Enel at all. At least, that was the theory. Well, what are we waiting for? He asked, let's get going. On the way to the Mary, Wiper took the time to introduce his crew to Luffy's. He gave Reiki an introduction, though they already knew her name. He pointed out Bram, who was a massive man with no shirt and a hat covering his eyes. Luffy wondered how he saw anything. He introduced Mayushika as well, a more tattooed Shandian than the others, and a bald head. I sent Genbo, Warashi and Yatsubane to our armory, he added as they entered the cloud tunnel back up to where Mary was moored. Told them to grab a bunch of dials and whatever else they could carry. Hope you're quick with your tools, Usopp. Usopp seemed nervous as Wiper placed his faith in him, but did not speak against the warrior, perhaps in fear of him. The walk back up to Mary was uneventful, and they soon reached the top of the cloud and pulled it open, revealing their ship waiting for them. Reiki volunteered to jump the distance and lower the gangplank so they could all board, using her skates to glide across the little bit of clouds between them and jump aboard. After fumbling a little, Reiki lowered the gangplank and allowed everyone else to get on. "Don't go without us," someone said. Luffy turned to see 3 men joining them, all carrying bags of weapons over their shoulder. Luffy could only assume they were the aforementioned men sent to the armory. Once they were on board and lowered the bags, Wiper introduced them. Genbo was the fattest Shandian Luffy had seen, which made him wonder how he got to be that big in a village with very little extra food lying around. Yatsubane was a tall man with white hair, his defining feature being his cap with feathers sticking out of it. Warashi too had a hat, also having feathers on the top. It was a cool look, he had to admit. Once they were all on, Luffy gave the order and the Mary began her journey to Upper Yard. Before they could do anything else though, Luffy wanted to see the dials. He walked over to where Usopp was fiddling with them, peering over his shoulder as Kamakiri explained them. "This one is a flame dial," he said to them as he held up a bright red shell. "It absorbs heat in the atmosphere naturally then releases it in a torrent of flame. It's a useful one." He put it down and picked up another. "This is an impact dial. Wiper showed you this. It absorbs kinetic energy and releases it when you press the button here." Luffy was fascinated by the shell's abilities, honestly. How could a simple shell do all of that? "Think you can do anything with these?" Usoing to the bag of dials brought with them. Usopp hummed to himself as he stared at the bag. "I probably could," he admitted, "but I won't have the time to jury-rig anything useful before we get there. At the very least, we should distribute these to our less powerful members. They'll be useful in dangerous scenarios." "That sounds good to me," Luffy replied as he stood up and watched Upper Yard grow closer in the distance. "Hey Wiper, how long is the walk to this ancient city?" "Who knows," Wiper replied from the boarding net, hanging from it to get an unobstructed view of their destination. "Anywhere from 2 hours to 8 or more. The jungles of Upper Yard are full of dangers. Bugs, swamps, quicksand, all of that. Not to mention Nola." "Nola?" Johnny asked him. "Who is Nola?" "Hopefully a pretty lady," Sanji noted with an interested look, making Genbo laugh. "Nola is a massive snake," he told Sanji, upsetting the cook. "She's descended from one of the old gods, Kashigami. She was an ally to our ancestors, but ever since we got shot up to Skypia and no one can ring the bell, she's gone a little crazy. She chases down anyone she catches sight of." "She was an ally?" Robin asked curiously. "Could that change once again, in our favor?" "Doubt it," Warashi replied, crossing his arms. "Nola would need to hear the bell and be reminded of Calgara and the old Shandians she loved. I doubt she would help us at all." "Calgara?" Luffy asked. "Isn't that Wiper's great whatever grandpa?" "It is," Reiki replied. "Why?" Luffy made a face and pointed at Wiper. "Why not send Wiper to her?" he asked. "Maybe she'll see the resemblance." Wiper's frown deepened at this, and he looked away from them. "You yourself said you could not see the resemblance," he said. "How do you expect a massive snake to?" Luffy just shrugged at this, making Reiki giggle. "Don't worry yourself about it," she said. "With any luck, Nola will be asleep as well and we can avoid her completely." "I sure hope so," Usopp said. How big is she, again?" "Big enough to swallow any of his whole without chewing," Kamakiri remarked with a smirk, throwing the dial up and down, catching it. Usopp audibly gulped at this. "Yeah, I really hope she's a deep sleeper," he said. The crew went about their preparations as Mary got closer and closer to Upper Yard, no one wanting to leave without something vital. Impact and flame dials were distributed among the crew, and ammo was replenished and double-checked. Pretty soon, the bay that they were sailing to came into view, and Mary approached the shore. "How close can we get before stopping?" Yosaku asked, already lifting the anchor. Right up to it, I guess, Nami replied. It's not a regular island, so it's not in the ground. Also, don't throw the anchor into the clouds, Yosaku. It won't do anything. The swordsman laughed sheepishly and lowered the anchor, making Marianne snort. Mary finally got to the shoreline, and Yosaku was allowed to toss the anchor down into the sand. Once they made sure they were secured, the gangplank was lowered and first of the invaders made landfall. Yeah, this is definitely part of Jaya alright, Nijiko said as they stared up at the huge trees and listened to bugs hum in the distance. It all feels very familiar. Does that mean there's more giant bugs? Chopper asked weakly. Yes, Wiper replied as he walked past the doctor, making him squeak in surprise. Don't worry about that. All of us traveling in a group, there's no way a few bugs will hurt. Not with all these flame dials we have, Kamakiri said, one in hand. So, which way should we go, fearless leader? Straight to the city, Wiper replied as he pointed. Can you see the giant jack, pirates? She's right there. Luffy raised an eyebrow but looked up as instructed, and his mouth dropped open. Holy shit, it's huge, he shouted, staring in awe at the humongous beanstalk snaking into the sky. It was so huge it managed to disappear into the layer of clouds hundreds if not thousands of feet above them, and it looked thick enough to be considered its own island if it were cut in half. I know you said giant, but that is way bigger than just giant. It must be a form of high-altitude gigantism, Robin mused. You see it at bottom of the ocean as well. Animals and plants grow huge to adapt to unfriendly environments. Perhaps that's why Nola has grown so big. Maybe we'll see other huge animals that will be desperate to tear us apart and eat us. You're kinda scary, big sis Robin, Johnny said as he inched away from her slowly. She simply smiled back at him, which just made him move further away. Well, at least we'll always know where we're going, Sanji said. That way forehead sword style over there won't get lost. Yeah, Zoro agreed. It's so big even edgy morons who cover one eye with their hair could see it. Don't start, Nijiko warned the pair before a fight broke out. We'll probably want something to eat before the fighting starts. Johnny, Yosaku, go and fetch some food from our storage. How much? Yosaku asked, scratching his head. Nijiko cast a glance at Luffy, who just watched her blankly. Enough to make sure Luffy doesn't eat all of it on us, she replied. The swordsmen groaned, slumping their shoulders as they walked back up the gangplank. Marianne walked behind them, twirling a paintbrush in her hand. I'll paint them and increase their strength, she noted as she went. Knowing Luffy we'll need to carry a shipload of food anyway. The trio disappeared back onto the Mary, making Luffy take a head count. Usopp, Vivi, he called, hurry it up, I'm coming. Luffy, Usopp snapped, peeking his head above the railing. I'm making sure I carry as much of our ammo and resources as I can. Some of us need it. I've got some of it too, Vivi called, appearing as well. I want to make sure I have enough to defend me's. Vivi was cut off as Mary erupted from the water, clutched in gigantic claws. Ah shit. Wiper shouted, a super express speedy shrimp. Luffy didn't need that info, he already recognized it as one of the shrimp that had grabbed them earlier. Gritting his teeth, he reared back and prepared an attack, aiming at the shrimp's face. It sadly didn't matter. In one swift movement, the shrimp reared back and shot out of the bay, going to the left. Luffy watched, mouth agape, as Vivi and Usopp reached for them desperately. Zoro, he shouted, Sanji, both men understood him immediately, and grabbed a hold of Luffy to keep him anchored as he extended his arm and shot it after the shrimp, flying past the edge of the bay and veering left to follow it. Luffy couldn't see the Mary or the shrimp, but he didn't stop extending his arm. He couldn't, he had to reach them. Luffy kept extending for what felt like forever, desperately wiggling his fingers to try and grab Mary and either haul them back or shoot after them. He didn't, he couldn't feel anything, they were already long gone. Shit, he shouted angrily, his arm snapping back to him. That itself took 20 seconds, which told him he'd extended pretty far. Wiper, we have to go after them. He whirled on the Shandian warrior, who was watching him with a pained expression. We can't, he said, we don't have time. Excuse me? Luffy demanded. The tone of the remaining Straw Hats morphed instantly. Zoro and Sanji too glared at Wiper, the tension in the air rising. Nijiko's hand had gone to her revolver, and Nami had reached for her cleam attack. Chopper was growling, halfway to changing into his muscle form. Robin remained neutral, but her expression was icier than normal. To his credit, Wiper did not back down. "I said we don't have time," he said. "The shrimp will have taken them to the altar, which is past Giant Jack by a considerable degree. If we go after them, we won't catch Enel off guard and we'll have to contend with him once he's prepared. That isn't a possibility you want to face." "Are you suggesting we abandon them?" Nami asked, a deep scowl on her face. "I'm saying you trust that they will head to Gianted. We can't afford to go after them if you want the element of surprise. That's just how it is." "Can't they handle themselves?" Kamakiri asked. "They're fighters, same as you." "Two of them are, at best," Nijiko said, looking to Zoro. "How is Yosaku and Johnny's training going?" "Fine," Zoro replied. "Are they good enough to defeat a priest who can read their moves? I doubt it." "We're going after them," Luffy decided. "Show us the way to the altar." Wiper's frown deepened. "I told you, we don't have time," he insisted. "They'll be fine. Have faith in your crew." "I don't mean to sound rude," Robin said, speaking up for the first time since the abrupt disappearance. "But the crew members kidnapped are not our strongest. I do not wish to see them torn to shreds by angry sky animals or sacrificed to a god by these priests. But I fear they may not have enough strength to resist. Also, it may not be a good look if the Princess of Alabasta dies on her first voyage as a member of the crew, Captain." "Exactly," Luffy agreed. "Show us how to get there." "And sacrifice our advantage?" Wiper demanded, not backing down. "Not a chance." Luffy grit his teeth angrily, anger clouding his mind. "Then say goodbye to your help. I'll go save my crew. Then go ring the bell at my leisure. You need me, but I don't need you." "You want to survive the jungle. You do need me," Wiper retaliated, stepping closer to Luffy and glaring him down. Luffy wasn't scared of the older man, not in the slightest. "Nolo would eat you whole without our help." "Yeah? Well, Enel will fry your stupid ass to a crisp without my help, I already said. I don't care about your people's story. I came to ring the bell for cricket. I'm perfectly content with letting Enel rule this stupid bit of land." Wiper's expression darkened, and he took another step closer. "I should have blown up your ugly ship when I had the chance," he hissed, grabbing a hold of Luffy's vest. Luffy just glared back at him, reaching up and grabbing a hold of his braided hair. "I should have let the others toss you overboard," he retaliated. Wiper's eyes narrowed, and he raised his free hand and balled it into a fist. He threw the punch for Luffy's head, as Luffy did the same and aimed for Wiper's. Before either hit could connect, Luffy was pulled back by two pairs of arms, and a fist crashed directly into Wiper's forehead, making him crumble downwards. "Easy, Luffy," Nami said in his left ear. She sounded livid, but controlled. "Don't start a war for no reason. Vivi worked too hard to form this alliance for you to ruin it," Nijiko said in his right. Luffy grunted in response to the sisters, not resisting as they hauled him away from Wiper. As for the Shandians, it had been Reiki who had slammed her knuckles into Wiper's scalp, and was now hoisting him to his feet. "What do you think you're doing? Trying to fight our answer?" Reiki demanded, Wiper glaring back at her silently. "I've let you lead this suicidal escapade quietly, but enough is enough. Have some empathy, you giant oaf." "Reiki!" Wiper started, but the Shandian woman raised a hand threateningly. "Don't, Reiki, me. I know all you care about is Calgara's legacy and restoring us to our home. But how do you plan to accomplish that without the rubber man? Exactly. Did you have a plan? Or did you start a fight because he dared to care about his own allies? What would you do if I or anyone else got taken?" Wiper's annoyed silence was a better answer than any words could have been. "Exactly," Reiki replied, lowering her arms. "You go after us. So stop butting heads like two enraged bulls. Besides, we don't all need to go after his friends." "Huh?" Wiper asked, raising an eyebrow. Reiki sighed and turned to Luffy. "I'll go after your friends," she told him. "If it's one of us, our skates will let us reach the altar faster than sailing upriver or trudging through the jungle. With any luck, I'll get there before the sun comes up and they get attacked by the priests." Reiki then turned to the other warriors, gesturing to Genbo. "Genbo, you're with me. You won't need the two of us, will you?" Wiper didn't provide an answer, which was enough of a confirmation to Reiki it seemed. The woman walked up to Luffy and bowed her head slightly. "Forgive Wiper," she said, His temper gets the better of him more often than not. He meant no offense to you. Luffy just stared back at the woman quietly, before Nami drove her elbow into his ribs. It's fine, Luffy said, getting the message. He's got a lot on his mind. Thank you for going after my crew. Reiki nodded with a small smile, casting a glance over her shoulder at Wiper, who just watched her. If that's all, I'll get going, Reiki said as she walked a few steps away. Is there anything else before I go? Luffy watched the woman quietly for a moment, before turning to look at his remaining crew. Can you take someone from my crew with you? He asked. Reiki raised an eyebrow at this. Sure, we have an extra pair of skates, she said, turning to Genbo, right? Yeah, from the armory, he said, dropping the sack from his shoulders and moving through it. Luffy turned to look at Nami, who met his eyes. Can you go with them? He asked, making her narrow her eyes at him. Why? She asked, do you think I can't handle myself? I never said that, Luffy replied. Even though they know this island better than us, you're an excellent navigator. If there's any chance you can get this done quicker, I want you to do it. Okay. Besides, I feel a lot better knowing one of us is going. I go myself, but as Wiper said, that's not ideal. There was silence among the Straw Hats at this, all of them watching him. Luffy, Nijiko asked, did you just use your head? What? Luffy demanded, looking at her, why is that surprising? He asks like it isn't obvious, Sanji said, making Zoro snort. Nami smiled back at him after this, putting her hands on her hips. Well, I guess I have too, she said, since you put your faith in me and all. Don't worry, I'll make sure we get them to Giant Jack in one piece. Luffy smiled back at her. Thanks, he said. Nami moved to take the extra skates from Genbo, and with help from Reiki attached them to her feet. She got a quick crash course in how to use them, which she seemed to take better than Luffy thought she would have. After making sure Nami wouldn't faceplant, the trio said their farewells and took off into the jungle, jumping over the tree line and disappearing. Well, looks like we're ready to go, Bram said, crossing his arms, or does anyone else want to split up? Johnny had no idea what was happening. All he knew is that he'd be thrown into the wall of the Mary at vicious speeds and hit his head. Thinking quickly, he grabbed Marianne as she almost met the same fate as himself and Yosaku, making sure she didn't hit her head. What the hell is happening? Yosaku asked over the sound of clouds being smashing into Mary's stern. Why are we moving? It's got to be one of those damn shrimp, Marianne shouted from Johnny's chest. We got taken. Was anyone on the deck still? Johnny asked, both of them shrugging back at him. Shit, Yosaku. Take little sis Mari, I'll check the deck. Nodding, Yosaku grabbed Marianne and shielded her so she wouldn't fall. Doing his best, Johnny struggled his way towards the stairs, stumbling and falling a few times as the shrimp veered quickly in different directions. Where the hell were they going? Finally making it up the stairs and into the cabin, Johnny made it to the door and flung it open, his eyes widening. A bit farther away from him, clinging on for dear life, was Usopp and Vivi. As the shrimp veered deeper into the forest, Vivi was nearly flung off the ship, making his stomach drop. I need to protect them, they're my crew. Big bro Usopp. Big sis Vivi. He shouted. The wind successfully carried his voice to them, making them turn and see him. Come here and get in the cabin, it's safer. Are you crazy? Usopp yelled. What if it veers again and we get flung off? Would you reheat cabin wall? Johnny demanded. Don't worry, I'll catch you if something goes wrong. Do you trust me? Not really, Usopp cried, but Vivi had a determined look in her eyes. Yes, she shouted, making him smile. Vivi got to her feet carefully, casting a glance behind them to see where the shrimp was going. Once she was confident enough, she released the railing and stumbled towards him. The shrimp sharply turned left, which Vivi almost managed to escape. As she got flung to the left, Johnny reached out and grabbed her arm, pulling her safely into his arms. Thank you, Vivi shouted over the wind, smiling up at him. No problem, he shouted back, looking up. Come on, big bro Usopp, come over here where it's safe. Usopp, hurry, Vivi coaxed, I made it just fine. I don't know if I can, Usopp shouted back, his arms shaking. Johnny could not tell if it was because of the fear, or his arms were about to give out. I know you can, Vivi shouted. Johnny turned to look at her in surprise as she continued. You're the brave warrior of the sea, aren't you? The best sniper in all the seas? You're Usopp the Great. This is nothing. Johnny smiled at her coercion, turning to look back at Usopp. You're the bravest man alive, he shouted. This is nothing. Usopp didn't look totally reassured, but he was slowly making it to his feet as they spoke. Why yeah, he said, I am the bravest. This is nothing. After a few more seconds of reassurance, Usopp released the railing and slowly made his way to them. The knot in Johnny's stomach got worse as he watched him, just waiting for the inevitable turn from the shrimp. It was a good thing he prepared himself. Right before Usopp got to them, the shrimp sharply turned. Usopp lost his balance and flew for the railing, but Johnny was faster. Right before the sniper went over, Johnny got a hold of his hand and heaved them both back within the cabin, Vivi slamming the door as they got inside. Then you Johnny, Usopp cried as he scrambled to his hands and knees, bowing to him. You're the best cabin boy ever. Is now really the time to call me the cabin boy? Johnny asked, laughing in disbelief. Vivi managed a laugh at this as well, and once Usopp got to his feet they scrambled below deck for safety. You guys good? Yosaku asked, anchoring himself and Marianne as the shrimp took another violent turn. We're fine, Vivi said, stumbling down the last few steps. We were the only ones left, so it's just us. We're all the weakest members too. Usopp shouted when he saw Yosaku and Marianne. If someone comes for us we're screwed. Weak? Yosaku demanded. I'll have you know little sis Mari and I defeated a numbers agent in Alabasta. Mary's cheeks flushed pink at this, but she nodded. Yeah, she agreed, we aren't massive pushovers. Still, he has a point, Vivi said as they all huddled within a circle of crates for protection. We are on the weaker side. We should stay hidden until Luffy and the others come for us. Any idea where we're being taken? Mari asked. No, Johnny replied, but we are still in Upper Yard. Maybe we get lucky and the shrimp takes us right to the ancient city. I doubt we're that lucky, Usopp mumbled. Agreed, Vivi said. Listen, we should prepare for a fight if we have to. Johnny, Yosaku, are you two ready to fight? Johnny swallowed hard, grabbing the hilt of Tsutomakura at his side. Of course, he said, we'll protect you guys. I've got my paints as well, Mari said. With that, you guys can be a little stronger for whatever comes for us. I have still got my custom ammo and some dials Wiper gave us, Usopp said, digging into his pack. These could be helpful. Vivi nodded, giving them all a somewhat forced smile. Don't worry guys, we'll get through this just fine. Let's remind these guys that you don't mess with anyone in the Straw Hat crew. As she said this, the whole of the Mary groaned around them, something above them splintering. Let's just hope Mary makes it to our destination, Johnny grumbled. If Nami was in a less tense situation, she would have been over the moon at her quick mastery of the shooter skates. After learning the basics from Reiki and Genbo, it only took her 5 or so minutes to get accustomed to skating across the clouds like she was ice skating. Before long they were zooming across the rivers through Upper Yard, jumping from river to river as they went deeper in. Looking up, she saw that Giant Jack was still ahead of her, meaning they weren't close yet. She hoped it didn't take too much longer to get past it, otherwise they might not make to the city before dawn. You're a natural at this, Reiki called over her shoulder, making Nami snap out of her thoughts. Have you skated before? No, Nami replied as they took a sharp turn right. I guess my sea legs are just really good. I'll say, she replied. If you can keep this up, we stand a much better chance of getting to your friends quickly. That was good. She'd been worried that they wouldn't get there before someone else did. Granted, this was not a battalion to fight, it was to get in and out safely. Just stay safe guys, she murmured under her breath, we're coming. It had been a while since Mary had stopped moving, but no one had moved yet. Vivi remained perfectly still in between the crates as Mary moaned and groaned, the stress of their adventure getting to her. As if getting grabbed by the shrimp wasn't enough, the poor caravel had been dragged upwards at the final leg of their journey. The sounds she was making reminded her of bones snapping. It wasn't a pleasant comparison. I think we're okay for now, Johnny said after a while. I don't hear anything, but I'll go check just to make sure. Yell if you need us, Yosaku said as his partner walked past him. Johnny nodded and ascended the stairs, putting on a brave face for them. Vivi held her breath as the door of the cabin opened, and Johnny took a few steps outside. Silence abounded. and Vivi did her best to control her imagination as she waited for him to say anything. "You can come out," Johnny eventually said, "we're alone." The four remaining below took this advice to heart, getting out from behind their makeshift camp between supply crates and climbing the stairs. Vivi was last out, and when she got out her eyes widened. Mary had been left grounded on top of what looked like a massive altar in the center of a lake of clouds. Beyond the clouds were trees so tall they looked like they went on forever, with vines as thick as her whole body hanging from them. When she looked down towards the clouds, her stomach turned when she saw fins sticking out of the water. "Are those sharks?" Usopp asked for her. Mari jumped to look over the railing. "Looks like sharks," she said solemnly. "With our luck, huge ones too." "So what do we do now?" Vivi asked. "We can't get out of here." "We only have two options," Yosaku said. "We either stay put, or try and get to that city Wiper mentioned. It's at the base of that giant beanstalk or whatever, so we know where to go." Vivi looked upwards, just barely able to see the massive stalk through the darkness. Well, Usopp said. Who's making that decision?" Silence fell upon the five of them. Vivi cast a wary glance at all her crewmates, seeing that none of them looked too thrilled at the potential of being in charge. Usopp looked ready to wet himself. Mari looked annoyed, and both swordsmen were warily scanning their surroundings. Thankfully, or perhaps unfortunately, she knew what it felt like to be in a position of power. "If I'm to be in charge," she said, "you have to listen to me, okay? We'll only get out of this if we work together." "All ears, big sis," Johnny replied. Vivi took a deep breath and scanned their surroundings, looking for answers. "Yosaku is right that we only have those two options," she said. "If we stay here, we have an excellent vantage point where anyone to come for us. We're elevated and surrounded by sharks. They help just as much as they hinder us in that scenario." "And if we leave?" Mari asked. "We're at the mercy of the forest," Vivi said. As if to prove her point, some creature howled from the trees, making Usopp jump. "I hate to be the one to say it, but this group isn't built for offense. If we were to get caught out by something too big for us to handle, we'd die. Which will happen if we stay anyway," Mari said. All eyes turned to her as she continued, "I don't think the shrimp brought us to an altar to give us a present." "Probably not," Vivi agreed grimly. "We're probably supposed to be a sacrifice once a priest wakes up." A horrible thought occurred to Vivi, but she pushed it down. "Damned if we leave, damned if we don't," Johnny summed up. Basically, Vivi nodded. "Give all of that, though, I say we stay. Usopp will have a great vantage point here, whereas in the forest we would not." "I agree with that," Usopp said. "I'd be no help in the dense brush. Not to mention all the hazards out there," Mari noted. "With our luck, one of these two idiots would fall in quicksand and die." Johnny and Yosaku both stared at her when she said this to them. "I think you'd die in quicksand first, little sis," Yosaku said pointedly. "I'm not that dumb," Mari replied. "Yeah," Johnny said, "but you are that short." Silence fell over the crew as the trio stared at one another. Vivi had to hold in a laugh at how adorable Mary's angry face was. "Let's not waste time," she said, moving on from Mary's height. "Usopp, take up a vantage point on the cabin roof. It's safer than the crow's nest, and gives you a great view." Usopp nodded at this, shouldering his rifle. Johnny, Yosaku, patrol from the deck. Usopp has great eyes, but he has none on the back of his head. I want eyes in every direction. "You got it, big sis," Yosaku said. Saluting to her, Johnny mimicked his motion, making her smile weakly. "Mari," she said, turning to the painter, "are your paints ready?" "Some are," she said, gesturing to the cabin, "but I need to mix some more of the difficult colors. Care to help me with that?" "Sure thing," she said. "You three, holler if you see anything, and I do mean anything." Aye, Vivi," Usopp said. "Yosaku, give me a boost to the cabin roof." On it, Yosaku agreed. As she walked back to the cabin, Vivi watched Yosaku bend down and put his hands together, pushing Usopp up as he stepped on his hands. "Wow, you're strong," Usopp commented. "You did that so easily." "I guess Big Bro Zoro's training has worked a bit, huh?" he asked sheepishly, rubbing his head. "That was nothing," Mari said as she paused in the door. "You should see him take a cannonball to the face." "Yeah, but I had to protect you, little sis," Yosaku told her. Vivi noted how Mary's cheeks flushed at this, giggling quietly as she followed the painter into the cabin. My recipes are fairly easy to follow, Mari said as they descended the stairs. Just ask if you're not sure about the compound or whatever. Got it, Vivi said. I've always wondered how your paint works. It isn't a devil fruit, is it? It's not, Mari said, it's a trade secret. Just follow my instruction. Gauging she wasn't going to get more out of the painter on this subject, Vivi's thoughts moved elsewhere. Can I tell you something, Mari? She asked as the painter set down her kit. She looked up with questioning eyes. Sure, she said. Vivi took a deep breath as she sat down opposite her and the paint kit. I'm worried about sunrise, she said. Why? Mari asked. Cause the priests or Enel will wake up. Yes, that, Vivi said, but we're really high in the sky right now. And Vivi shifted uncomfortably. Well, the sun sets and rises on the horizon, she explained slowly, but we're well above the horizon, so she could see the realization dawn on Mary's face. So the sun will rise faster up here, she said. Dawn to Skypia isn't dawn for the blue sea. Exactly, Vivi said. I don't know if it'll happen or if the change is significant, but I also don't recall Wiper saying the exact time the sun will rise. Mari said. Silence fell between the pair before Mari sighed. I guess we better work fast then, huh? I guess so, Vivi agreed. Mari handed her a recipe book, telling her to just start on the simple paints. Vivi flipped through the book, trying to gauge which paint would be helpful. Hey, Vivi? Mari asked. Vivi looked up from the book to see the painter watching her again. Yes, she asked. Mari squirmed where she sat, looking uncomfortable. Why did you tell me that and not the others? She asked. Well, that's easy, she said. I don't need Usopp freaking out even more, and neither Johnny or Yosaku would help him remain calm. You trust me to remain calm? She asked. Vivi smiled at her. I just flat out trust you, Mari, she said. Vivi smiled wider when she saw the blush hitting Mary's cheeks. She was so easy to tease. Besides, I need a second in command while we're stuck here. And no offense to the guys, but I think you're the best fit for that. You think? Mari asked. I do, Vivi agreed. The painter did not say more, returning her eyes to her paints. Vivi just smirked as she returned her gaze to the book, focusing so she could read the exact amounts needed. Despite this focus, she still heard Mari mumble a thank you. It had to have been over an hour of walking so far, and Luffy was already ready to beat someone's ass. Granted, his crew being kidnapped and Wiper had not helped that attitude to simmer down. The team of Wiper's men and his remaining crew trudged quietly through the forest, keeping their eyes out for anything that might have been dangerous. Wiper's crew mostly took charge of that, seeing as they knew the terrain. Wiper himself stayed far away from Luffy, which he appreciated. He still wanted to punch the guy. He'd have to settle that later though. Luffy, someone said. Looking over his shoulder, he saw Nijiko motioning for him. Slowing down, Luffy matched his stride to his quartermaster's and turned to her. Yeah? He asked. Nijiko watched him with a serious expression, one she usually wore right before she chastised him or the other men. I think you should go smooth things out with Wiper, she whispered, gesturing forward to their guide. Luffy looked over at him, annoyance bubbling up again. He started it, he complained. I know, she agreed, and I wanted to hit him too. But the last thing we need right now is our leaders fighting against one another, instead of with one another. Do you understand? Luffy frowned at her, crossing his arms. I'm not gonna apologize for trying to punch him or leave, he said. Then don't, she replied. Do you remember what Vivi taught you? Don't chew with your mouth open, he asked, recalling one night earlier in the week when Vivi has chastised him for doing so. He'd stretched his lips closed after that. No, not that, Nijiko said as patiently as she could. I mean when you spoke to Masira after attacking his men. Words are powerful if you use them right. Don't apologize for trying to hit him or leave, just say something else to smooth it over. Get it? Luffy mulled this over in his mind, humming to himself. He recalled how he hadn't lifted a finger at the bar in Mock Town. Shanks did use to say violence doesn't always have to be the answer, he mused. Exactly, Nijiko said. Use your words, get back on the same page as him. We'll need it. Sighing, but knowing the woman was right, Luffy nodded and sped up his stride, jumping over fallen logs and mud to catch Wiper. The Shandian had gone far ahead, presumably to keep distance between himself and Luffy. "Yo, Wiper," Luffy said, starting as casually as he could. "Wait up." Wiper cast a wary eye over his shoulder, clearly tense from hearing his voice. "What is it?" he asked curtly. "Just wanted to talk," Luffy said, still searching his mind for the right thing to say. Why did Vivi have to be on the ship? The Straw Hats needed their voice. About earlier. "What about it?" Wiper asked, returning his eyes to the tree line. Luffy thought quietly for a moment, trying to know what Wiper would want to hear. He put himself in the warrior's shoes, thinking as hard as he could. "I regret losing my cool back there," he said, trying not to celebrate his awesome word choice. "I know having to choose between my crew and your mission wasn't a hard decision, especially since you don't know them well." Wiper eyed him quietly for a moment, and for a second Luffy worried he'd said the wrong thing. Thankfully, though, Wiper sighed and turned to him. "I regret trying to make you choose," he said. His face made him look unhappy, but his words were sincere. "That's an easy decision for you to make. I'd have made the same one, were I you. Some random guy's mission would not be as important as my people. It's just..." He paused. "Well, it doesn't matter. I suppose I'm trying to apologize." Luffy tilted his head as he watched Wiper, thinking of his next words carefully. "You really want to reclaim this land for your people, huh?" he asked. "Of course," Wiper said, clenching his fists. "It's been a dream of mine ever since I was a child. And now, I might have the answer right before me. And I nearly lost it because I want it so badly." "Your dream, huh?" Luffy asked. Wiper nodded, making Luffy sigh. "You should start with that next time." "Huh?" Wiper asked, sounding confused. "Let's put that fight behind us, tattoos," Luffy said, holding out his hand to Wiper. "Let's kick Enel out of this place and reclaim it." Wiper stared at his open hand for a moment, seemingly thinking, before raising his arm and clasping his hand with his own. "Let's do that," he said with a smirk, "and then we can party in the City of Gold. All night long. You can punch me for trying to make you abandon your crew then." "Actually, start with that," Luffy said. "The party, not the punch." Luffy nearly did a double take when Wiper cracked a smile. "I'll do that," he said. Before anyone could do or say anything else, a thunderous crack echoed through the forest around them, making everyone jump and look around warily. "What the hell was that?" Zoro asked, swords drawn. Luffy looked over to Wiper to see he was nervous. "Not now," the Shandian hissed. "Why is she awake?" "Why is who awake?" he asked. Wiper grit his teeth as another tree was snapped somewhere in the distance, followed by a deep hissing. "Nola, the giant snake," he replied. "I hoped she would be asleep, but I guess we aren't that lucky." "So what do we do?" Sanji asked. "Kill it." "Good luck with that," Kamakiri said, scanning the tree line. "Nola is a tough old snake. It'd take the sun god himself to kill her." "Kamakiri's right," Wiper agreed. "We have to stay as far away from her as possible. If she sees us, it's worst case scenario." "How close is she, Bram?" Luffy turned to see the warrior with a hat over his eyes had knelt and placed a hand on the ground, focusing on it. As he did so, another horrific sound echoed through the forest. To Luffy, it sounded like someone was rubbing a massive piece of sandpaper across the ground. "Close," Bram said, and getting closer. "The tremors in the dirt are coming from the west." "Then we head northeast," Wiper said, "and hope she changes course. Let's go everyone. Pick up the pace." As Luffy ran, another tree crashed down somewhere behind them. "Man, that snake sure is angry," he said. "Hey, Chopper, do you think you could talk to it?" "I mean, maybe," Chopper replied. He was in his regular reindeer form, galloping alongside Robin and Nejico. "But if Wiper's right and she's gone mad, I don't know if she'd listen." "I'm not willing to take that bet," Nejico shouted. "If he fails, we get swallowed whole." "Your four-legged friend probably wouldn't even get a chance to talk," Warashi said. "Nola isn't known for waiting until her meal stops bargaining with her." As the group ran from Nola, Luffy couldn't help but wonder if the crew that was stuck on Mary were okay. Keeping watch for over an hour was tiring. Doing so for close to 2 was even worse. Going on 3 now, Yosaku was ready to collapse, an eye on the tree line surrounding the altar for so long his eyes were beginning to glaze over. He could feel a yawn coming up every few seconds, and he had to fight it off and stay alert. This operation happening at night meant he wasn't getting any sleep, and that was awful considering how hard he was worked during the day. It was just that morning, after all, that he'd mopped Mary up and down in preparation for their journey into the sky. "I'm falling asleep, Johnny," he commented lazily, leaning on the railing. "I'm so tired." "I know how you feel," Johnny agreed from the opposite side of the ship. "I just want to close my eyes, but I can't." "Exactly. What if someone comes while we're asleep?" he asked. "I'd hope Usopp would see him," Johnny replied. Yosaku cast a glance over at the cabin roof, where Usopp was still laying, scanning the river with his rifle scope. "Maybe the girls can keep watch," he said. "No," Johnny replied, "let them sleep. They're the brains of this operation, they need their rest. We just swing our swords at anything that looks like an enemy." That was true. Yosaku was not one for thinking up great plans. Vivi and Mari had that covered. "Hey, Johnny," he started. "Do you think we can actually defend the Mary?" "What do you mean?" Johnny asked. "Well," Yosaku started, "Wiper said those priest guys are powerful. Really powerful. I don't mean to sound rude, but no one here is particularly strong. We're the strongest, and that isn't saying much." Johnny said nothing for a moment before sighing. "We don't have a choice," he said. Yosaku looked over his shoulder at his partner to see he was flipping his blade around in his hand. "We swore an oath to protect people. That's what we wanted, right? I don't care if I'm weaker than some priest. I won't let them harm the others without him taking me out first." Yosaku watched him as he twirled his sword, smiling. "I was thinking the same thing," he said. "Just wanted to make sure we had no illusions about our chances if someone does show you." "Guys!" Usopp shouted, startling both swordsmen and nearly sending Yosaku face first onto the deck. "Unidentified flying object inbound. There's someone on it, and I don't think it's gone fall." Yosaku looked up where Usopp was looking, and saw the figure he'd described. There was indeed something flying right for them, with a man riding it. "We just had to open our mouths, huh?" Johnny asked from his side. Yosaku laughed as he reached over his shoulder and drew Jishin from its hilt. "Let's hope they're sleepy too," he replied. "Girls, wake up," Johnny shouted as he steeled himself, watching the enemy close in on them. "Usopp, take him out of the sky." "Oh, on it," Usopp shouted. Not 1 second later, shots rang out, Usopp firing 4 rounds at the attacker. Johnny watched, but none of the shots hit their target. The enemy's bird simply dodged the shots like he knew they were coming. "What is it?" Vivi asked, appearing from the cabin with Mari close behind her. "Enemy incoming," Yosaku told her. "Stay safe, we can handle this." "Don't be stupid, let us help," Mari shouted, but Vivi held her back in the cabin. "We'll support you with Mary's paints," she said. "Be careful though. If it's a priest, he's going to be powerful." Johnny simply nodded in return, looking back towards the incoming enemy. He was now within eyesight for him, and he could see that he was flying on top of a gigantic purple bird that let out a terrifying squawk as they got closer. The man himself seemed to be wearing a leather cap and woolly clothes, probably to protect him from the cold as he flew. Usopp took another shot at him, but the bird dodged again and flew straight up. It landed on the mast of the Mary, and the man looked over its shoulder at them. When he did, Johnny noted his thin mustache and beady eyes. "Intruders," he shouted, "let it be known this is God Enel's land. On my pride as a priest, I'll sacrifice you in his honor. You should be thankful, as it is a great honor to die for Enel's glory." "Sorry, I don't believe in your god," Johnny replied, brandishing Sutomakura at him. "Don't make us kill you." The priest laughed at him. "You, kill me?" he asked, "in your wildest dreams. Warriors of your strength level could not hope to defend against my mantra and my skill. I'll give you one last warning. Lay down your weapons and die quietly." "Why you first?" Usopp shouted. Johnny flinched as another shot was fired, aimed squarely at the man's face. He watched, stunned, as the man simply moved his head to the left, the bullet burying itself in Mary's mast. "You'll be the first to go," he said. "My name is Shira, invaders. Pray to Enel I kill you quickly, Fuza." On his command, the giant bird dove from the mast and Shira raised a javelin. They soared for Usopp on the cabin roof, but Johnny wasn't going to allow him to get close without a fight. Waiting for the perfect moment, he leapt as Fuza flew over his head. Sword of the Sea. Inverse waterfall. Johnny's uppercut slash was aimed at the bird's giant right wing, but it was dodged easily by Shura. This, however, put him directly in Yosaku's path. Sword of the Earth. Boulder drop. Raising Jishin over his head, Yosaku swung it down, aiming directly at Shura's head. This forced him to fly off course, off of Mary and into the open air. Thanks guys, Usopp said weakly, looking pale white. No problem, focus on the battle, Johnny replied. Johnny, Yosaku, over here. Johnny turned his head just in time to see a vial flying for his head, being thrown by Mari. He raised a hand and caught it, staring at the bright orange paint inside. What is this? Yosaku asked, having been thrown a vial as well. It's a new paint I made, Mari shouted. Orange of adrenaline. It should wake you up, let you focus on the battle. Johnny smiled at this, uncorking it and splashing it into his arms. As soon as the paint had a moment to seep in, Johnny's eyes snapped open as his brain fired up. He could practically feel his nerves buzzing with energy as whatever was in the paint put his system into overdrive. Holy shit, little sis Mari, Yosaku exclaimed, what is in that? Never mind what's in it, she shouted, focus on the battle, I'll try and splash him if he gets close. Okay, you two stay in the cabin if you can, Johnny said as Shura circled like a predator sixing up its prey. We can handle this. Are you sure you don't need us? Vivi asked, her peacock spinners in her hands. We can help. Less people fighting on the deck, the better, Yosaku told her. Gives us enough space. Vivi looked unsure of this, but she nodded and stayed within the cabin door with Mari. Johnny returned his eyes to Shura, who was still circling. I'll give you credit, Blue Sea Sailors, he called, that attack threw me off my target. Still though, you won't be able to stop me. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Shut up and fight us, if you're so strong, Yosaku called. Don't fly around like a coward. Shura's response was to swerve in midair and dive bomb directly at Yosaku, who raised his sword to defend himself. Shura raised his javelin and it connected with Jishin, sparks flying. Fuza flapped his wings, and Johnny watched as Yosaku was forced to the edge of the Mary, gritting his teeth, and he tried to force Shura back. Hold onto him, Yosaku, he shouted, raising his sword and rushing the bird. He jumped and aimed to cleave Shura's head in two, but the man dodged his blow and struck him in the chest with his fist, sending him flying off and into the mast, knocking the wind out of him temporarily. Johnny struggled to get up as he heard another shot ring out, but Shura dodged it once again. I already said, stop struggling, Shura shouted. With another roar of force, Shura's javelin glowed red hot. Fuza flapped its wings, and as Yosaku was thrown off balance, Shura aimed to impale him with the end. White of blindness, Shura moved in his seat to try and dodge, but the vial thrown by Mari splashed across his back. Gah, what the Fuza? Responding to his will, Fuza took off back into the sky, Shura yelling obscenities as he did. Another new paint? Johnny wheezed out as he struggled to stand. Mari nodded. It's not a perfect recipe, so it won't last, she shouted. Get up, Johnny. It's not over. Nodding in agreement, Johnny focused on his lungs. He fought against the trauma inflicted and forced his lungs to intake air again, letting him slowly get to his feet. Thankfully Shura was still circling, clearly still blinded. Any ideas? He asked aloud as they watched him fly around. Try and hold him still, and it'll only take me one shot, Usopp said. Hard to do when he's got the bird, Yosaku replied. I've got something for him. Just distract Shura while I find it. Johnny spared a glance to see that Usopp was digging around in his bag, looking for something. If he needed time, he'd get it. Shura was flying back down at them, javelin poised to impale. Johnny gripped Tsutomakura tightly and raised it horizontally, winding his arms back as far as he could. Sword of the Sea. Raging tsunami. Johnny's slash created a ranged attack, his slash flying for Shura and Fuza. Shura used his javelin to deflect it, Fuza evading Yosaku as he tried to swing his own sword. Shura let out a laugh as he circled once more. You warriors are stronger than I gave you credit for, he called. You're definitely holding me off. Wish we had ended this already, Johnny muttered. Unfortunately, Enel is going to wake up soon. I don't have any more time to play with you. Fuza. The bird cawed in response and dove again, aiming right for Usopp again. Johnny turned, moving in the direction as well to protect him. He couldn't move. Johnny's eyes widened as his body refused to cooperate, an invisible force stopping him from moving. He spared a glance at Yosaku, who was also struggling to move. "I can't," he started. "Big bro Usopp. Look out." Usopp looked up from rummaging around in his bag, and let out a shriek of terror as Fusa closed in. The sniper leapt from the cabin roof and landed hard on the balcony below him, just barely able to use his arms to stop his face from hitting the deck. "What's wrong, you two?" Vivi shouted. "We can't move," Johnny shouted. "Something is stopping us." Shira laughed as he circled closer and closer. What a terrible fate to be subjected to, he noted, the two warriors having to watch their weaker comrades die. Fusa, the bird dove, and Usopp struggled to find what was in his pocket again. He hadn't found it yet, but he was given time as Mari appeared before him and chucked a Y into Fusa's eyes. Purple paint splashed all over the bird's eyes, causing it to squawk angrily and fly off, Shira cursing again. "Can you hurry up and find whatever it is you're looking for?" Mari shouted at Usopp. "Purple of confusion is new too, it won't last." "There's a lot of stuff in here." "Okay," Usopp shouted. Finally, he took his hand out, revealing a small rifle cartridge he'd been supposedly looking for. He rebolted his rifle and loaded the round, aiming at Fusa as he circled. Special round. Electric birdshot. Usopp fired, and Johnny watched as a plume of smoke flew out of the barrel. A cloud of pellets flying at Fusa. The bird was struck in the chest, and when the rounds made contact they glowed blue. Johnny's eyes widened as the bird shrieked in pain, the pellets electrocuting him. The bird of prey remained in the air for a second or two before smoke rose from its body, and it began to fall, spiraling down towards the altar. "What the hell was that?" Yosaku asked in awe. "Non-lethal birdshot," Usopp replied. "It's a spread that electrocutes whoever gets hit by it." "Good work, big bro," Johnny replied, watching Fusa fall. As he got close to the deck, Shira jumped off his back and onto the deck, growling as Fusa bounced off the rock altar below. "You'll pay for hurting Fusa," he growled. Johnny tried to run at him, but again was stopped. Shira laughed as he leisurely walked towards him. "What's so funny?" Yosaku demanded. "It's just cute watching people squirm when they realize they're stuck," he replied. "I told you, you never had a chance from the start." "What are you doing to them?" Mari shouted. Shira cackled. "Wouldn't you like to know?" he asked in her direction. "Now, I think I'll take out the girls first. After all, you all fought so valiantly to save them." "Stay away from them," Johnny shouted, but Shira ignored him. He casually strode towards the cabin, chuckling to himself as he ascended the stairs. Vivi already had her peacock spinners spinning, and Mari had another paint bomb in her hand. Usopp was still there as well, but Johnny noted he was struggling to move too. He'd been caught in Shira's web as well. "Get back here," Yosaku roared, struggling against his restraints so hard veins were bulging from his arms and forehead. "I won't ever forgive you if you hurt them." "Whatever would I do without the forgiveness of a few morons?" Shira asked sarcastically from the top step. He looked over his shoulder at them and smirked. "Be a nice, quiet audience. Show's about to start." With every step Shira took, Johnny's stomach turned more violently. There was no way Vivi and Mari could defeat him, especially on their own. Closer and closer he got, and Johnny fought so hard against his restraints his wrists bled. He had to move, he had to help them. "I came with big bro Luffy so I could get stronger. I wanted to protect people. How can I do that if I can't stop one man?" "I said get back here." Johnny turned just as the sound of wires snapping resounded around him, and he watched in awe as Yosaku, now free from his binds, rushed towards the stairs. His entire upper body was marred by cuts from what looked like wires digging into his body, leaving him a mess. It didn't stop him though. Yosaku leapt from the deck straight over the railing of the upper deck, Jishin over his head. Shira looked up in surprise, only having time to raise his javelin over his head as Vivi and Mari leapt off the balcony. Sword of the Earth. Earthquake impact. Yosaku's downward stab was so powerful Johnny felt the blow from where he was. Jishin cleaved straight through the javelin with no issue, Shira forced to leap out of the way back down onto the deck. Yosaku hit the upper deck, Jishin cleaving through Mary's floor and impaled itself up to the hilt. Cracks spread from the stab, the floor groaning from Yosaku's strength. Growling, his partner pulled the blade free and jumped after Shira, raising his sword as Shira regarded his broken javelin in surprise. Well, he said, looks like the dogs have some bark after all. Johnny, don't move, he heard Vivi shout. Doing as he was told, Johnny remained still as Vivi ran behind him, swinging her spinners. In a second he'd been freed from his restraints, his body his own to command again. Thanks big sis, he said, picking up Tsutomakura from where he dropped it. No problem, she said, he's using some sort of wire technique. I noticed when Yosaku was getting sliced up trying to free himself. That made sense. Johnny looked back down at his own wrists, which were injured as well. Now that he thought about it, wires made sense. He hadn't seen his restraints, because they were too hard to see in the dark. Turning, Johnny watched as Shira got to his feet, still holding his broken javelin. Yosaku circled him like a hyena, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I see I was wrong about you, pirates, Shira said. You have my respect. Let's make this more interesting, shall we? Shira turned and drove his broken javelin into Mary's deck, and ignited the weapon. Johnny gasped as the heat ignited Mary's wooden boards, spreading quickly across its surface. Don't hurt the ship, you asshole, Usopp shouted, still restrained. It was a gift. Did I ask if you cared for the ship? Shira asked as the fire grew. He drew a dagger from his belt, and Johnny noted the dial attached to the hilt. Let's see if you can take me down before your ship is turned to ash. I'll free Usopp and we'll come up with a plan, Vivi whispered in Johnny's ear. Keep him distracted, don't give him an inch. I'd never dream of it, big sis, Johnny replied. Smiling, Vivi clapped him on the shoulder reassuringly before running back for Usopp, leaving himself and Yosaku to deal with Shira as Mari watched from the bottom of the stairs. As he came in closer to circle Shira, he assessed his situation. Yosaku was in bad shape. Breaking free from his own binds had cut deeply into his skin, and it was showing. He panted heavily as blood drenched his tropical button-up, the tree pattern gone in the red. He couldn't rely on his friend, he had to do this himself. He cast an eye at Mari, who still had a paint bomb in her hands. She met Johnny's eye, and she raised the bomb and gestured to it, then at him. Johnny secretly pointed a finger at himself, and Mari nodded vigorously. He nodded, and began to circle in her direction. So swordsman? Shira asked, keeping Johnny in his eyesight as Yosaku circled behind him. Don't you want to save your ship? More than anything, Johnny replied, I want to beat your ass, little sis. Crimson battle rage. Just like Yosaku, Johnny became drenched in red. His was not blood, though. His was Mary's chemical paint seeping into his skin. As the paint took effect, Johnny felt his rage amplify, and his eyes narrow. Nothing else existed anymore, just himself and Shira, an enemy he needed to defeat. Roaring, he rushed the priest. Shira raised his dagger to parry Johnny's slash, and the oddest thing happened. The second the priest moved to block, Johnny sensed where his arm would go. He swung low to strike instead, but the priest switched tactics and met his blade there. Shira raised an eyebrow at him as they struggled. Did you just? The priest didn't get a chance to finish, as Yosaku swung down on him from behind. Shira jumped to the side, and Johnny followed. The two engaged in an elegant back and forth of clashing steel, neither allowing the other to gain ground. Every time Johnny predicted where Shira would block, Shira predicted his prediction and blocked him. When Shira aimed to strike, Johnny felt like he knew where it would be and avoided it, only for Shira to seemingly guess first and strike where he was headed instead. Neither landed a hit on the other, but Johnny could tell he was losing ground. His predictions were coming slower than Shira's, and his strikes were becoming sloppy. Shira grinned at him as they locked blades again, the fire blazing. What's the matter, swordsman? He asked, is your ability waning? Johnny offcut away from Shira and prepared another strike, but the back of his head buzzed for some reason. On instinct he fell to the right, and just as he did Usopp's rifle fired. Shira too dodged the bullet, the projectile splashing into the clouds below the altar. Fuza. Johnny looked over his shoulder just in time to see the fried bird appear from over the railing, raising its talons at Usopp and Vivi. Vivi used her peacock spinners to fight it off. Usopp trying to get a clean shot over her shoulder. He turned back in time to parry a strike from Shira, who cackled. "Eyes on me, glasses," he said. "Don't lose sight of your enemy." Johnny grit his teeth and roared, pushing Shira away. He attacked with a flurry of slashes, all of which were evaded or blocked. Shira turned to kick Yosaku in the stomach as he tried to advance, knocking him to the ground and making him wheeze. Yosaku did not get up quickly, leaving Johnny to fend for himself. Shira turned and deflected his incoming slash off his dagger, using it to get close and punch him in the stomach. For the second time in a few minutes the wind was forcefully pushed out of Johnny's lungs, and he was kicked down onto his knees. He tried to grab Tsutomakura, but Shira kicked it away, then kicked him onto his back. "Damn you!" Johnny wheezed as he tried to stand, Shira putting a boot on his chest. "You surprised me back there, glasses," Shira told him with a smirk, his stupid mustache making him look even smarmier. "I thought for a moment you had used mantra. But it seems I was wrong. It pains me to tell a warrior this, but it seems this is the extent of your current ability. If you had trained harder, or honed your mantra, perhaps you could have defeated me." Johnny had no idea what he was taking about. He looked around wildly for help, but saw none. Vivi and Usopp were still fending off Fuza. Mari was looking frantically for a weapon, and Yosaku had still on his back. No one could help him. He returned his gaze to Shira as the man turned his dagger downwards, preparing to stab him. "You'll regret this," he hissed weakly. "So will you," Shira said. He raised his arm, and Johnny winced as he swung downwards. Boom! Johnny snapped his eyes open at the explosion just in time to see Shira take a cannonball directly to the back, sending him flying off of Johnny. He crashed through the railing and fell off Mary onto the altar, and Johnny could hear him topple down a few steps. What the hell was that? Turning his eyes to the source of the cannonball, Johnny found it. Mary's broadside cannon was aimed towards him. No one was with it. Not Vivi, not Usopp or Mari or Yosaku. Not even anyone else on the crew. The cannon was simply aimed at him, all by itself. Johnny watched the smoke billow from the barrel, his confusion punctuated by Fuza's squawking. From what he could tell, it looked as if Mary's cannon had turned a full 90 degrees on its own and fired at Shira. But that surely hadn't happened, so what had? He was too dumb to think about this. Grabbing his blade, Johnny rushed to where Shira had fallen off just in time to hear a whistle. He looked over his shoulder to see Fuza dive past him, down to the altar. Shira jumped onto the bird, and the pair took off into the sky. "Get back here," Johnny shouted at him, Usopp taking a shot at them. It was dodged, but Shira looked back at them angrily, blood dripping from his mouth. "This isn't over, invaders," he shouted, "your lucky reinforcements came for you," making a face. Johnny looked back at the clouds in confusion. There, racing across the clouds on skates, was a mane of orange hair. "Big sis Nami," he shouted in surprise. Nami was accompanied by two of Wiper's warriors, and they all jumped up onto the deck with the skate's propulsion. Looking back, Johnny saw Shira and Fuza were already far away, too far away for them to do anything. Laughing humorlessly, Johnny collapsed onto the deck. "Johnny, are you okay?" Nami asked, rushing to his side. He nodded weakly, taking his glasses off to wipe at his eyes. "I'm fine," he said. "Help Yosaku." Nodding, Nami turned and rushed to the other swordsman, yelling at Vivi and Usopp to help her. The man with them immediately set out drenching the fire with water, which he did with dials they had brought with them. "Fine work, swordsman," the woman, Reiki, said as she approached him. "You managed to fend off a priest of Enel. Very impressive." "Fend off?" Johnny asked, leaning his head against the wood behind him. "Nah. We survived. I'd say you won all things considered." Reiki's expression softened at this, kneeling next to him. "As long as you draw breath, you're still in the fight," she said to him. "Take a moment to catch your breath. We'll tend to you and put out the flames. But we don't have long to rest." Nodding quietly, Johnny watched as Reiki joined the other man, Genbo, in putting out the flames. He spared a glance towards Yosaku, who was having his chest wrapped tightly in bandages by the others. Mari pouring green paint onto his arms. He snorted and put his head back again. "I have to train harder, huh?" he asked. "No shit." He then turned his eyes back to the cannon that had saved his life, which was still aimed towards him. No one popped out to say they had fired it, so it remained an anomaly he could not explain. Johnny just scoffed as he put his glasses back on and crossed his legs. "Thanks for the help, Mary," he said jokingly. A warm feeling flooded his mind when he said this, which he attributed to Mary's paint wearing off. Shura grimaced as Fuza flew through the forest, heading back in the direction of the city. He hadn't expected to take a cannonball to the back, and he was fairly certain it had broken some of his bones. "Those warriors were stronger than I anticipated," he mumbled to himself. "That one who freed himself from the ordeal of strings was a surprise, but that other one, I swear, it felt like he was using mantra." Sighing, Shura fought off the pain he felt and reached into a pouch on his belt, pulling out his radio dial and clicking the button. "Gedatsu," he said. Satori. Don't underestimate these invaders, or they might kill you on accident." "When aren't you sweet, Shura?" Ohm's voice came back. "That's a nice way to tell us you got your ass beat." Shura growled as Gedatsu and Satori laughed as well. "Shut up and listen," he said. "I'm serious. They're actually formidable. It matters not what they can do," Gedatsu replied. "Enel will rise from his slumber shortly. They are without a hope when the time comes." Shura wheezed weakly as he sat up straight, speaking into the dial again. "I look forward to seeing them all fry."